Alright, in today's video, I'm going to go over fertilizing strawberries organically. I did a previous video on fertilizing blueberries organically. Feedback on it was pretty good, so I figured I'd do this. Strawberries are going to be somewhat similar to the blueberries, but there are a few differences. I mean, you have different types of strawberries, like you have everbearing, June bearing, day neutral, and such. And I tried to look up some videos for this video for organic fertilizing programs. Everything I found was, commercial size, and it was all, chemical, non-organic style fertilizer. So I'm going to go over what I do for my strawberries. Have this little raised strawberry bed. It's 3 tiers for about several years, probably at least 3, probably 4 years now. Pretty much all everbearing strawberries. And this is probably one of the better years for strawberries I've had. So I'm just gonna go over what I've been doing with it. So the first thing is that when should you fertilize strawberries organically? Me personally, I do it. It's obviously going to depend on your climate. I live in zone 7B, but I do it as soon as I start to see just a little bit of life, just a little bit of new green growth coming out of that winter hibernation. So depending on your climate, that could be something like maybe even late winter if you're in a very warm area, all the way up into mid-spring if you're in a very cold area. So for me, I probably started around March or so once I started seeing some new growth. And what I use is Hollytone. So I apply that about once a year, really, for my everbearing strawberries. And Hollytone, just like I used on the blueberries, has added sulfur into it to help acidify the soil. Strawberries do like some acidic soil, a pH of around 5.5 to about 6.5. Not like blueberries, which are like 4.5 to 5, but more like 5.5 to 6.5. You just really want to stay out of that alkaline territory. If you do a soil test and your pH is say like a 7, or really like 7.5 or close to 8, like really alkaline, you're probably going to want to actually add some type of a organic soil acidifier. Same product I use for the blueberries. It's just sulfur. But if you just have natural, kind of like a neutral pH, 7, or a lot of soils like where I live are around like 6.5, 6.8, just using a product like Hollytone, which has the added sulfur, is going to be enough. Obviously this is a raised bed, so it's not my native soil, but I know the mix I put in here was fairly neutral. Now how much do I apply? I basically just sprinkle it around. I grab a handful, I just kind of sprinkle it around all of my plants and just kind of mix it in. An idea of how much to give per plant if you were had more area, like a more open bed, I would say probably about a tablespoon per strawberry plant, and just kind of work it into the soil. What I like to do after that is, once my strawberries start to flower, I then use a organic liquid fertilizer product. I like Aggie Thrive. I'll have a description in the video for this product. They have their website kind of explains what makes their product differently, but basically it's partially pre-digested, which gives some instant availability of nitrogen, because organic fertilizers feed the soil, which then feed the plants. That gives it some instant feeding capabilities, and I do that about every 2 weeks during the output of flowers and fruit. I do about 3 ounces per 2 gallon water jug. In this little area here, I'll do about 3 to 4 of those jugs every 2 weeks, and that's just why the plant's flowering and producing berries. So that's going to do for the fertilizer, but let's get into the different types of strawberries, because your fertilizer program may be a little bit different based on the type of strawberries you have. So mine are everbearing. Everbearing strawberries, you get basically 2 crops a year. So that first crop is, once again, it's going to vary based on your weather, but generally in the spring it could be from even like sometime in late April all the way up until June, when you start getting those first berries, and they'll put out for about several weeks. And then after that, they go, they're still around, green foliage, but there's no more flowers, there's no more fruit. And then late summer, early fall, once again, depends on your climate, they are going to produce a second crop. Now that second crop is not as large as that first crop. The first crop is definitely larger, but what I'll do once I start seeing those flowers for that second crop, late summer, early fall, I'll then just start applying my Aggie Thrive again, same way, that once every 2 weeks, 3 ounces per jug, 2-gallon jug. If you had June bearing, which is probably the most popular variety, that's what pretty much your strawberry farms are all growing, especially picket places. June bearing strawberries get their name from mostly, from the time that they bear, but of course that does depend on your climate. Like here, we may start having strawberries in June bearing in late April, versus some climates you may not get them till June, where they get their name from. And they produce one crop, a heavy crop, for several weeks, and they put it all out at one time over a 3-week period, and they're done. Those are the best to grow for, like, you need to make your jams or you want to preserve stuff, because you get an abundant amount in a short period of time. But after that, they're done. They don't do any more. They go. There's no more strawberries to be produced until that next year. With those, I would fertilize maybe a little bit differently. I would still do my first spring growth with my Hollytone when they start to leaf out. I would then move to doing the same thing with the Aggie Thrive while they're producing, and then I wouldn't do anything until probably like late fall before they go dormant. I would probably sprinkle a little bit more Hollytone around, work it in there, just so they can have some fertilizer to kind of break down and give themselves something to help them out when they first start growing. And then that second application of spring of Hollytone will help carry them through, because those June bearings they're using all their energy at one time to put out, so they need maybe a little more help. Give them a little stuff in the fall to help them out to get ready for that next season. And then you have the last variety, which is probably, I would say, the most uncommon, and it kind of gets grouped into everbearing sometimes, and sometimes it's not. It really depends what you're reading. That's day neutral strawberries. So day neutral strawberries, basically, they don't really care a whole lot about the sunlight, as in the sunlight is what's triggering the plant to do what it does, the hours to put out its berries. Day neutral's like, yeah, I really don't care. And once it gets above a certain temperature, like the mid-30s, consistently, they will start producing berries, and they consistently produce a small amount of berries until they go dormant again from the cold. Some people group this into everbearing, but really everbearing is a little different, because you're really getting 2 crops out of everbearing. Some people say you can possibly sometimes you'll get like a little third one. For me, I get 2. So if the day neutral, I would still do the same thing. Once they start seeing some new growth in the spring, I'd give them that Hollytone, and then throughout that berry production, I would be giving them Aggie Thrive. But I'd probably not do it every 2 weeks, because you're going to be applying a lot of fertilizer. I'd probably bump it out to maybe every 3 weeks, or maybe even 4 weeks with those, depending on how long your season is. Just because they're producing a little bit at a time, they probably don't need as much help and as much help with that energy production. So kind of to recap, if you have the everbearing strawberries, give them a little fertilizer in the spring, your Hollytone, and then move to doing something like a liquid fertilizer like Aggie Thrive throughout the berry, then stop once they start with their second output in the fall or late summer. Start hitting again with some Aggie Thrive just to get them through. If you have a June bearing variety, hit them up in the fall with a little Hollytone, and then hit them up again right when they start seeing some new growth in the spring, and then give them something like Aggie Thrive throughout the berry thing, and then stop until fall. And if you have the day neutral, a little bit of fertilizer with that new growth in the spring, and then give them some fertilizer throughout their growing period, but probably spread it out a little bit farther due to the longer period and less berry production. I'll give a few tips. So you need to thin out, your strawberry plants love to send out runners, and they'll spread, and you really need to thin them out. Looking at this bed, you'd probably think, oh, I didn't thin this out. I did, I promise you. But typically thin it out during kind of like midwinter, when all that foliage is basically dead and all these leaves are pretty much gone. We'll pull all those brown leaves off, and you can actually see all the actual plants, each individual plant. And we'll just sit there and just basically almost pull every other one out. Like we'll pull out a lot of plants And they really need that to have that space. And really, some will say you need up to like a foot of space per plant. We grow ours a little bit tighter. I'd say probably like 6 inches of space per plant. But if you don't thin them out, they will just literally grow on top of each other, and then you're going to have issues with, you're going to get a lot of small berries. You're going to get a lot of potential disease. It can trap a lot of moisture in there too much, and then a lot of the berries can grow mold, and just get nasty and mushy. That's a big issue if they're too compacted. So do thin them out every year. When they're dormant, before that new growth starts to happen, but do it during the winter so all that foliage is dead and you can actually see what you're doing. And yeah, that's it. I'm just going to show y'all. Like I said, I'll have links in the description for all these products. The Hollytone. You can also they have a product called Berrytone. Berrytone's the same company. It's actually the exact same product. It has the same NPK ratio, at least as of now. They could always do an update on the products. I've seen them do that. It has the same sulfur content. It's just they're trying to increase their market share and just throw a different product out there. But Hollytone and Berrytone, same thing. Exact same NPK, same ingredients, same sulfur content. I'll have Aggie Thrive in there, which I think is a great product. It's my 2nd year using it, and I really like it. I think it's one of the better organic fertilizers out there, and you can get a 2.5 gallon container, which I like. I actually have that in my garage for my garden because it brings the cost down. You definitely save money with that. And then of course I'll have the sulfur thing if you have like alkalinic soil. And then before we end the video, I was kind of show you, when you grow your own strawberries, you don't expect them to be like they're always in a store. Like I have different sizes. Like you got this one here. Very sunny out here, guys, so sorry for the picture. You're gonna get a whole lot of different sizes. You may even get some little small guys like this. So, and then the tips I would say, like today is very hot out today. We're getting later in the season. If you sometimes you may want to pick your berries a little bit early. If you don't necessarily want that white top on there because those can be kind of bland, but they go from that to very red very fast. And sometimes if you're out here picking them every day like I do, you think, oh, I'll pick that berry tomorrow. You may want to pick it early sometimes because this heat can, once you get this later season, can really go from a good berry that day to the next day being overripe and just being fried by the sun. Anyway, I hope this helps somebody. Fertilizing strawberries organically. If you have any questions, just leave a comment. I'll try to get back to you within a day or so. And yeah, strawberries I think is something everybody should grow. And honestly, I think berries as a whole are probably the best fruit to grow. Whether it be blueberries, which I think are the easiest, blackberries, and strawberries and raspberries if your climate allows it. Anyway, until next time, I hope everyone has a good day.